So this is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and this is a review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I saw it earlier today. I saw the 1 o'clock show. It ended at 4. It was really long. Yeah, it seemed like it was 3 hours long. It probably was 2.5 hours, but yeah, it was really long. So Dial of Destiny. Really, honestly, I can't say why the critics hated it. Why some of them didn't like it. It was fine for what it was. It wasn't too overt with the fantasy magic silly stuff. They apparently didn't remember that even the first one had fantasy magic silly stuff in it, in the guise of the Ark of the Covenant, and they're finding it, and it melts Nazi faces. That was in the first one. Melting the Nazi guys' faces. And the second one was a prequel, and it had like they were after the Stones of Kali thing. It was kind of offensive to Indian people and Short Round. And then they had the third one, and that was the Holy Grail. It's a Monty Python episode, yes. And then they had other silly archaeology things. Then you had the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles in there, and you had where they found all kinds of things like El Dorado and stuff. And then they had Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I think it was around 2005 or something for that one. And that one was kind of the lesser of the four of them at that point. But elements of that movie actually work. There are scenes that are really dumb. The giant ant scene and the flying monkey scene and the UFO alien that comes back together at the end and blows up the temple and the spaceship flies away. Yeah, completely ridiculous ending. Now we come to, George Lucas and wanting to do spaceships on an alien planet. It was, his original show. Originally it was Lost City of Gold that they were going to do. And he didn't want to do that one. So, and ended up being delayed for years, and then they did the Alien one instead, even though that's the one Harrison Ford was kind of like, oh, well, all right. And, the Alien one. This one is the Dial of Destiny, the Antitheka machine, the Archimedes dial unit machine thing. There's a fanciful device in the Aegean, in the Mediterranean area that can apparently predict time travel, sort of. Predict time fissures somehow in stuff, which is silly. But they get around to it. That part is silly. But you figure like evil Nazi bad guy chasing them and ex-FBI but CIA guys that are bad guys chasing them and all that. You figure with all that silliness going on and not a single bullet ever hitting anybody, unless it's important for them to hit them, then it hits the other people and grazes him and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, it's Indiana Jones. Sure. When you consider the source material from the 30s was basically, Alan Quatermain stuff and that kind of thing. Yeah, they were always doing stuff like that. They were always lowering the damsel into the lava, just about to go into the volcano, and she would go down, and they would rescue her in the next episode. Or they're tied to the train tracks and rescue her in the next episode. It goes back to the dime novels of the 1800s, really. They would do stuff like that. And Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, same whole thing. And the story is supposed to take place, and even in the 30s. The first one was 36. This one was 35. The scene in the beginning of this movie is 1944, and they've de-aged Harrison Ford in this scene, long train chase scene thing to get the Antikythera device, or half of it, from his friend. They're on a train. It's an elaborate train sequence, which was very cool. But having his old grizzly voice come out of him was like, that's a little weird. Um, yeah. This was so it's a sequel to the Last Crusade, basically at that point. Then we jump. Then it's allegedly lost, but we know it isn't because the audience showed that it wasn't lost. We jump to 69, July 69, the moon landing, and grumpy old 80-year-old Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones / Harrison Ford. It's just Harrison Ford. So we have Indiana Jones going. He's old, basically. He's going to retire. He's old, and he's going to retire from being a professor now at apparently another university. He's not the same one as in the other movies. He's going to retire, and along comes Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who shows up from the British show she plays Fleabag in a British show, or is the show called Fleabag? I'm not sure. I think that's the name of the show, and she just plays a character in it, hyper confident character, and that's ticking off all of the right wingers, all of them. They're all ticked off by a strong, independent woman who's kind of a bad guy in this story. She's a bad guy with a heart of gold, kind of thing. And some of Indiana Jones's other compatriots have been like that, though, and they introduce the other guy, and he's also. They introduce Sala. Sala comes back. He has a scene in there, extended scene with the kids and all that. And he was sort of like that. So it's like that's not different from what they've done. Everything that they set up, where the critics are knocking the movie based on trailers that they saw, that didn't. The CG is a little funny in the trailers. But all that stuff is like based on stuff they were guessing. That's my guess. Now, I suspect that Stone Gremlins and the others are reviewing it now, and I suspect that he will like it, and that the Red Letter Media won't, but they won't say it's the worst one they've seen, because it's still Crystal Skull. I suspect that Angry Joe will half like it, and Little Joe will not like it. So, and the other guy will sort of like, sorry. That's probably what will happen with him. The black critic will probably like it. So it's they have anachronistic moments of that, just because in the 60s, just after the civil rights movement, really a year afterward, they wouldn't have integrated into the FBI and the CIA and the police force and all that, the black people. They wouldn't have. It's 1969. It's a year after the civil rights movement. They wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have had prominent features in the story. That they could object to. They could say that doesn't make sense. That's anachronistic. How would they have a rank? They would be, there, but they wouldn't have rank in their secret organization at all. They just wouldn't, because it's right after the civil rights thing happened. There wouldn't be other people of color showing up in the middle of that. They just wouldn't do that back then. It's the 60s. So that's a little odd. But it doesn't take you out of the story at all. It's just a little odd. The notion that the action set pieces are fine. They go from the library scene chase thing to Morocco. I think it's Morocco. Or then they pass Casablanca to wink at the camera. Go, Casablanca. See, like that movie Casablanca. That was kind of funny. They go on to. Where is it? Or is it? Yeah, somewhere like that. They're in the Mediterranean for most of the movie, and they're hanging out over there, and they're in that area, and which is different than having them be in South America and see aliens. Although originally, the original story of Indiana Jones 4 was the Lost City of Gold, and it was going to be the kind of what they did, but it wouldn't have been aliens. It would have been like Incan like zombies. It still kind of wouldn't have made sense, and would have been offensive. Zombies and headhunters and stuff. It would have been offensive, but yeah, at least this movie acknowledges that. So did Young Indiana Jones happen then in 1920 something? I guess it did. So yeah, there's so the plan, the bad guy's plan, all hinges on, in spoilers, on the Antikythera device, the Dial of Destiny. Finding out what that is. Although currently we know what it was. It was not a time machine. But okay, it's a science fiction fantasy movie. Sure, it's a time machine. Why not? So I'm okay with that, with it being silly there, because sure, why not? It was an astronomical device. Just because it's an astronomical device doesn't mean that it has time travel powers. It means it's just it's a device for predicting where the moon and the planets were. They found the pieces, and they looked at it. But in this movie, I guess it's a time travel machine, so why not? And they have a clever scene with a watch that they find down in the tomb of Archimedes. They go to that. They go to the tomb of Archimedes as well. It does beg the question, if they found part of the machine down in the ocean and they recovered half of it and the other half melted away, what half are they looking for? Because they've already lost it. Yeah, that's inconsistent with the timeline. They kind of explained that, though, because there is a scene that's absolutely nuts at the end. They explains where the watch came from, where the plane came from, where the technology to build the device in the first place came from. I won't give that away. I want you to go and see the movie for yourself to see how nuts the last part of this movie is. It's truly bizarre. It wasn't space aliens, but I'm not going to give that away. But it is clever the way they set that up, and they find these things in the tomb. They're like, wait a minute, how did that get there? And then you put two and two together pretty quickly watching the movie. And go, oh, they're actually gonna. Oh. I'm not going to tell you though. I'm not going to tell you. Yeah, I was going to go on about that, but then that gives away the ending, and then you probably don't want to go and watch it. No, it is a good movie. I liked it. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with the horse riding scene down in the parade in the subway. That was fine. The train scene's fine. Music is a little different. It's different. But they do have the Indiana Jones theme at the end. They have executive producer was Spielberg and Lucas, and it was this new guy, Mangles, I guess. I think he did the Jurassic Park movies. I don't know. He did something else. Yeah. And he's divorced from Marion in the story, and apparently Mutt Williams died in the Vietnam War, which is kind of messed up. Which is like, oh, they really wanted to say Shia LaBeouf was not there in this movie. They're like, oh, he's dead. But the audience was like, oh, that's messed up, kind of. You know, they weren't amused or cheering. They were just like, oh, that's messed up. That was their reaction. I guess they liked Mutt Williams. I don't know. It's kind of goofy. But yeah, so we have a movie with. We have a movie with just some goofy stuff going on. I don't want to give it all away, though. Yeah, but they have to find a Dial of Destiny, and it does beg the question, which is typical of these Alan Quatermain type of stories, Indiana Jones type of stories. Go look up Alan Quatermain if you want. But the idea that several coincidences lead to other things, like there was a hidden thing in the wax on the boat, or they go down into the ocean and they don't get the bends and they come back up. Okay, that's anachronistic, but so what? There's bad there. How would the Nazi guys even know if the machine worked? That's another thing. It's like, how would they? And if it didn't work, and they had captured Indy and all that, and they're all saying, "Oh, use the thing," and it doesn't actually do anything, would they still go after him? They've realized, oh, this is just like Archimedes just lied. That's not what happened in the movie, by the way. It didn't really do that, or he didn't know, or it was just, or it is what it is. It was a astronomical calendar device for an early computer for calculating like star positions and planet positions. That's what it was. similar to Stonehenge. Stonehenge was a big stone version of that, or figuring out when the seasons happen and stuff. The big stone version of it. So yeah, a lot of ancient cultures made things to plot stars and planets and stuff that they could see. So they figured it out because it's not aliens. It's just they figured it out. Yeah. So the aliens probably think we're a primitive warlike culture and don't want to have anything to do with us until we evolve a little more. That's what it is. But there are no aliens in this story, I think. So yeah, it's set in the 60s, and what was funny is, like, I wonder if anybody noticed, but back in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, he's actually only 13 years younger than Sean Connery, so he would have been his stepson. Not his actual father, it would have been his stepfather. Would have had to have been. He couldn't have been 12 when he had him. He had to have been. So the ages don't matter. The ages don't match up. Yeah. Yeah, Indiana Jones on 69. 69. I said, well, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Yeah, was fine. Okay. As a character, she wasn't trying to replace him. She was sort of an anti-Indiana Jones in the story. She's sort of the opposite of that. So it was fine. It worked. She learns how to be more like him toward the end. But it's not, oh, I'm going to replace you. Oh, see, girl replaces guy because incels are butthurt and can't get laid. No. And the incel people probably don't watch Indiana Jones anyway, so I don't know what they're worried about. They're not watching that stuff. They're at the home making up stuff that they pulled out of their, They're not watching that. They're not. So, yeah, it was fine. It was just fine. I nothing wrong with it. Yeah, solid 3 stars, maybe even 3.5, even after hours after seeing it. There's nothing wrong with the movie. It's fine. Go see it in theaters. It has some nice action pieces. You don't stay for another thing that separates it from the other reviews is that you don't need to necessarily, you can check your brain at the door with most of those movies anyway, and you don't need to worry about the dialogue and stuff because it's not really, it's an adventure serial. It doesn't matter if the characters make no sense in some cases. I don't know. Yeah, so there's a kitty cat right here. A kitty. She's gonna knock over the camera. There's a kitty. See? Need a kitty. Yeah. A kitty cat. Yeah. Yeah.